Greetings and greetings and fumbling. This has been quite the 24 hours. I really want to talk about it and discuss where we go from here. This also impacts, well, no, it doesn't impact her. I was getting ready to say it impacts the troll, but no, it does not impact the troll. Sorry, I've spiffed it all over the place. I got to turn the AC on. Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write for Patheos, a column called No Longer Quivering. I went back and checked last night. It was more than 10 years. So I wrote for Patheos for more than 10 years. I don't know why I've been saying 9+ years all this time. I should have gone back in and checked. My length of time with Patheos was for like 2009 until 2020. So there it is. So all that time spent writing for those people. So I've got to tell you a little bit about them and what happened. And somebody thankfully came up with an answer for me on what to do. Okay, if you could do the YouTubey things while I sit here and sweat, it would be great. Hey, Carolyn, Happy New Year to you too. These are my opinions, as Renelle Smith likes to say. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. I'm not trying to stop anybody from the truth. It just is what it is. Hey, number one fan, don't bully anybody I talk about here. Don't even be rude to them or others. Life is too short, and I think my word for 2023 is kindness, as much as I long to be unkind to certain people. Okay. As many of you know, I've been busy writing a book about my experiences in a non-denominational, quiverful, evangelical, fundamentalist type church. I've gotten very close to finishing my book finally. My book, I keep going back and forth on the title. The working title was A Quiver Full of A-Holes, because that is really what it's about. It's not about the bad theology so much. Well, there are spots where I talk about the bad theology, but it's mostly about how strange and crazy everybody I went to church with was, and how they all completely misinterpreted the Bible in so many different ways. I'm not saying there wasn't sweet unity and things at the beginning, because there certainly was, but we took a left-hand turn at some point. So I started thinking about names. Oh, you're looking forward to it, Carolyn? Thanks. I started thinking about names, and I came up with A Far Place with Strange Fire, because we did end up in a far place, and we did end up with that strange fire that they talk about in the Bible, which is that thing that looks like God, but it really didn't have a lot to do with God or Jesus or anything else. So my final name, because they always tell you to err on the side of brevity in a lot of things, and I tend to be verbose, as you well know. Okay, so the official title is With Strange Fire, because that's what it was. It was a church with strange fire. And so yesterday, I bought a domain name. I started working on the site. I was excited. And I wasn't going to republish anything I'd written by Patheos. I was just going to link to Patheos. As I was just saying, I had a long relationship with Patheos, through Patheos beginning, through Patheos when it was owned by the Time Warner Group, through when Patheos was bought out by BeliefNet of Virginia Beach. I saw a lot of changes in those years. There were a lot of things that were done differently. The last couple of years of my relationship with Patheos, I struggled to stay within the strictures, within the lines, because one of the new rules that BeliefNet put in place was no cursing, none. So that meant I couldn't use any colorful vulgarities at all, which I wasn't prone to them. Hey, Nancy, Happy New Year. I wasn't prone to call colorful vulgarities all the time. I just found my salty bracelet. It's going on. So I wasn't prone to doing that. But after that, I came up with ways to use colorful vulgarities because the rule was if you were talking about something that was named a color, I wrote about S-filled cupcakes, a film by Steven Anderson's son's fiance's family, and just things like that. So there were some of us that were chafing at the very family and just things like that. So there were some of us that were chafing at the very rules towards the end. I was one. Once COVID hit, and I found myself constantly having to correct misinformation, science misinformation being put out by people in Fundytown. And I knocked heads with Bethel Redding. It became a hard slog. For over 10 years, I wrote a daily column. Think about that one for a minute. Think about that one. And that's through Costa Rican visits, that's through health crises, that's through family get-togethers. I did that for 10 long years, which is why I've never really pounded as hard as everybody else on the fact that certain YouTubers don't take vacations. I get it. When something you're passionate about something, you're extremely passionate about it, and you do it every day, hammer and tongs, you're not going to put it down for a family vacation or anything else. You're going to figure out a way to make it work, whether that means loading so many pieces in advance or what. You make it work. So I made it work. Well, what I discovered yesterday when I was setting up my website with strangefire.com is that Patheos had removed the entire non-religious spectrum. I had originally started out in a different group in Patheos, and eventually they moved me to the non-religious spectrum. And that was kind of strange for me because I'm still a Christian. And in some ways, I'm glad they did because I got to make the acquaintanceship of some truly fine, exceptional people who were atheists. Dale McGowan, our editor, was just a wonderful guy. Andrew Hall, who's here on YouTube, awesome guy. The Friendly Atheist, amazing guy, another guy that I liked. I could talk to about all of this. There were ones that I liked better than others, and there were ones that I actually just very quietly eased away from because I could tell they were toxic trouble, even though everybody else thought they were the bee's knees for a while. So finding out that all of my writing was gone was just such a huge shock. I was like, oh my goodness. When I left Patheos, I did not do like a lot of people and say, oh, hey, give me a compressed copy of all my writings. I kept thinking, you're hosting it, that's good enough. Well, for some hours yesterday, I was running around freaking out, thinking they had stopped hosting it altogether, and formulating a plan to get it back and load the most important pieces onto my new website. Well, I found out the Wayback Machine has everything. Truly fun, exceptional people who are atheists. I'm not referring to KJ in any way, shape, or form, Java Man. I'm talking about my other colleagues there who were gracious and kind to me, and I could ask questions of when I had problems. And basically, I'm just going to say, most everybody I know in the atheist community, most everyone, is way more moral than most Christians I know. It's almost like having a belief in God has, no, it isn't almost like, it's like it is having a belief in God is not a guarantee of morality at all. So I started pulling pieces off of the Wayback Machine last night and crying and freaking out, worst ever, and discovered this morning, one of my good friends said, oh no, they're not gone. They're not gone. What Patheos did was they unindexed everything. They just completely unlisted it. So it's in there. It's just unlisted. So if you're actually looking for something that I've written on NLQ and you know what it, you know, basically the keywords, what you can do is, I know it's a good jail free card for a lot of them. And that's so incredibly wrong. That's not what faith is. So if you need to find something, and I don't have it up yet, you can go into Google, search no longer quivering, search the keyword, and guess what? It will bring you to a list of options. The pieces are there, they're just hidden. So not only am I hidden, but everyone else, most everyone who was still writing for Patheos after I left on the non-religious spectrum is now at another site called onlysky.com. Set up their own site and they're going strong. I've gone in there and read Andrew Hall's really funny, hey Bo, really funny takes on so many things. So many times it'll pop up and say, so-and-so said this, and I'll click and follow the link. I'm going right into Andrew Hall's Laughing in Disbelief blog and just laugh myself. He is so funny. So after discovering that, I was like, and I started moving over the pieces I want on my website because it's not all of them, obviously. But I want a nice mixture because I want to be able to show the world that certain types of theology lead only to toxic outcomes. So that's my rant. Oh, I couldn't believe it. 10 years, man. 10 years of writings, and I thought they were all gone, but thankfully they aren't. Now, a certain writer I could mention, her pieces are completely gone, but they always were completely gone. Here's the thing about Patheos now. I went in and I looked last night hard at their website. Almost all of their, not almost all, the majority of their writing, their authors, their pieces are rubber stamped evangelicals. Not everybody. There's a Catholic section, there's a Buddhist section, there's a Muslim section. So there are sections, there's enough sections of alternate faiths for them to be able to say, well, yes, we host the faith conversation. We host it so well. When really they don't. They're just promoting, they are promoting the certain worldview and pieces that they approve of. They're not showing those of us that have done the whole terrible, tragic, being part of that nonsense thing. They're not showing any of that. They're not showing the spiritual abuse, the damage, the things that happen. They've just completely done away with that. They've hidden it. They turned every one of us, the non-religious specter, into redheaded stepchildren. Well, this redheaded stepchild is not going to shut up. She's going to continue to rant about these things here and on her new website and everywhere else that it strikes me, be it Twitter. I'm going to try to revamp and start using Instagram and some other things that I don't fool with. The problem with the internet is twofold, and I ran into this some last night too. Number one, the technology moves at the speed of light. Why do I say that? Because over 30 years ago, I was making websites. I was doing it as a business at one point for churches. Okay. And it has changed so tremendously. You have to remember that when I first started doing it, we were just using HTML. You would go in there and you would do your HTML code and upload, and it would upload right, and you would see everything. Oh, thank you, Nancy. Thank you. These days, that's not how it's done. So I had a steep learning curve last night, and I was using a site builder that I'm not that familiar with. Now, I made sure that it was the exact same kind of CMS platform that I used at Patheos to upload with. So that was sort of kind of familiar to me, but there have been changes there. So technology, it moves at the speed of light, and I am old. I'm 62 years old. So you have to think about when I started doing websites, I was in my 30s. And the other thing about the internet, the other big problem, as Java Man said, if you can't see what sources are, you could be consuming any kind of spin or whatever and not know where it came from, not know any of that, and end up in some really strange places with strange fire again. You could end up taking in this garbage. I started thinking about this a lot as I wrote the book, some of the chapters on things like miracles. I'm not saying the miraculous is impossible, because clearly it does exist, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're all just playing games with our minds. But so many things, my old faith spectrum, that I thought were real and genuine, I've had to look at again and say, they're not real, they're not genuine, it's just fakery. What am I talking about? Being slain in the spirit. If I had $1 for every time I was on a prayer line and got pushed down hard onto the ground, I could upgrade my site to somebody else doing the work. That's how many times I went through that. I'm talking about holy laughter. I'm talking about gold dust falling from the skies, feathers falling from the skies, gemstones falling from the skies. I'm talking about all of that. I'm talking about people laying their hands on you and telling you to deny your physical symptoms of your illness so you can get healed. I'm talking about the power of the mind to heal what's going on. Well, maybe not to heal what's going on within you, but to make you think you've been healed. The mind is such a vast and weird thing that we've just barely scratched the surface of. And so many times in my old church, we would have these weird things happening. And everybody embraced it. And I sort of kind of reluctantly embraced it. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But looking back and examining that time in my life, I could say that I never genuinely felt any of that. But I wanted to feel it so bad. I wanted to see gold dust. I wanted to see gemstones. I wanted to see angels. I wanted to be slain in the spirit and slammed on the floor. I wanted all of that. It was asbestos. Oh, gosh. It was asbestos falling from the ceiling. Oh, Java Man. No, I've read some accounts of people who have lived through that stuff, who used to do that stuff. It is glitter being dropped from the ceiling in places. There are ways of faking that stuff. And apparently, the higher you go up in the food chain, the more likely you are to fake that crap. And that enrages me, because so many people, not just me, so many people, including one of my dearest friends in this world, a lady named Joni, who is right now, she's in rehab because almost 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago, she had a head-on collision and damn near died. She still believes this stuff. And I love her dearly. If I could wave a magic wand and make her stop believing in that stuff, I think it'd be better for her, but I can't. And I don't want to bust her bubble. When she reads my book, her bubble will be busted enough. So all of this is going on in my mind now. And like I said, that all plays into the whole idea of strange fire as well. Gee, thanks, Patheos. You gave me a hell of a scare yesterday. Oh, so None of that stuff. So the more I think about those things that I went through, like the time my friend Kathy and I went to Brownsville Assembly of God for a series of conferences there. They were having revival services every night of the week. Neither Kathy nor I could speak in tongues. We had never spoken in tongues between the two of us. We'd been around so many people who spoke in tongues at our old church that we started to wonder what the hell is wrong with us that we can't speak in tongues. Ooh, now I gotta look that up, Java man. Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm gonna have to look that up. We started wondering what was wrong with us. So when they started at the end of the night going, would you like to do this? Raise your hand. Would you like to do that? Raise your hand. They had one that was like, would you like to learn how to speak in tongues? And we were both like, yes. This is what happens when you get old. I don't care how much you work out, you're gonna have a little bit of chicken wing waving going on, and I'm fine with that. So going back to the speaking in tongues at Brownsville, so we were let off into a room in which a team of Brownsville people lectured us about how we weren't stepping out. The weirdest things after I drink coffee. I guess it's bits and pieces of coffee. So they were telling us we were clearly not stepping out in faith. We were not exercising our faith. Hey, Rena Roo. Oh, Happy New Year to you too. So they said if you can't speak in tongues, you can pray and you can sing in tongues. Well, that's right up my alley. So I was like, So this went on for hours, this teaching. And they started assigning us people to work with us one-on-one so that we could speak in tongues or sing in tongues or whatever. And towards the end of the night, it dawned on me they were not going to let us out of that room until we spoke in tongues. It was just not going to happen. So that was the point where I managed to blast out a few paltry, halting notes and syllables. And they were like, praise Jesus, she's got it, she's got it. But here's the thing, I didn't have it. I was just doing this to get out of the room. And so I'm out of the room and I'm going, was that God or was that me? Because I think that's a really important thing you have to ask yourself when these things happen in churches. And when you're involved in it, you're just going to be left asking yourself, is that you? And that's not an entirely wrong thing to think. You have to look at those things and try and decide how many of them are real or not. When I was young, my mother would not allow me to get off my knees until I got the Holy Ghost and spoke in tongues. So needless to say, I learned to jibber jabber real quick. Sean, oh my goodness, yes. Shandai, blah, blah, blah. I mean, everybody I know that ever spoke in tongues at some time uttered the Shandai phrase, which I should not make fun of, but that's always my go-to. Shandai, yabba dabba doo. And so I did that and got out of there. My friend Kathy refused. And at the end of the night, she had all of the helpers ringing her. Hey, autistic, you just missed me talking crap about Patheos. They have hidden all of our writings, those of us that were on the non-religious group. They've hidden all of our stuff. They took the index away. The only way to access it is to Google it directly and say, no longer Quivering, whatever you want to know about. I'm moving it all to my website. Well, not all of it. I'm going to move the better pieces to my website because there's a lot of sausage making that I'm not proud of that I wrote there that is going to stay there. Like a lot of the things about the Duggars, like, and then she would fill the bathtub and baptize me. Girl, I lost count how many times I've been baptized. Crazy. Oh, that is, well, autistic, that's crazy. Autistic, I can tell you why, because they're trying to rebrand themselves as the conversation about faith. So the majority of the blogs there are now evangelical. There are some Catholics, some Muslims, some other ones, so they can prove that they are inclusive without actually being inclusive. I'm sure that's what's going on. We always were the redheaded stepchildren of Patheos anyway, so that this is not surprising. So back to speaking in tongues. So I got that. I questioned it. I didn't really do it much unless super pressured, and then started babbling out syllables and thinking, oh, I am such a fake. God is going to strike me with a lightning bolt anytime now. So I'm cringing away, looking at the sky, expecting to be burned to a sizzle. Fortunately, my church only required one baptism. My husband never got baptized in our old church. Myself and all my children did. We did. And that is something to talk about for another day, because for the last 12 years that we were there, I hosted baptism. And that was a whole different crazy ball of wax that had more in common with the baptism scene at the beginning of the Righteous Gemstones than anything else. It's not surprising, isn't one of the owners, our head boss, an atheist? I don't think they're atheists at all. They were bought by BeliefNet, which is distinctly not atheist. It's evangelical. So I'm believing that that's what's going on. Our church did that too, but my mother had her own ideas. Oh goodness, it sounds like your mother had some things going on. I'm sorry. That's a terrible way to live, to be constantly rebaptized. Well, I guess it didn't hurt you any. And to the baptism part, I'm not talking about the other stuff. That is just, as parents, we're responsible for protecting our children, guiding them, and all sorts of different things. But religion adds a whole different crazy list. The person that got me into Patheos to retrieve my old posts, showed me where they were, is a dear friend of mine named Mike Hickman. Okay. Mike has written a book called 1324, and it is all about, it's a fictional book. He wrote it based on his experiences as the child of a revival preacher that went around, did revival in tents, that was extremely, extremely physically abusive under the spare the rod, spoil the child theology. So he had written this lengthy thing about religious child abuse, spankings and the like, or worse. I don't want him to call them spankings. So he had all of that in there. He'd written this long piece, and it was scholarly research, the whole 9 yards. And I'm going to have to leave that there. I may have to set up a side site to post some of these other things in. I was baptized as a baby, Catholic and Lutheran, but grew up Episcopalian because my parents divorced. Nancy, I can relate to that. I was baptized Catholic. My mother was Catholic. My father was Episcopalian. My father and I attended the Episcopalian church. I attended the Catholic church on Saturday afternoons with my aunt, who was just a few years older than I. Oh, autistic. I tell people, I have my own hair secrets. And the main one is shampoo here, condition here, and lots of coconut oil. That's it. I think that I just am lucky in how it grows, I guess. So I had that kind of upbringing, Nancy, mostly Episcopalian. And I'm going to say, based on the continuum of trauma and toxicity, the Episcopal Church is not a bad place to land. That or the Methodist Church. Sure, there's some things that are awful there too, but your chances of getting away unscathed without major religious trauma and spiritual abuse are a lot higher. And it was such a weird thing when I was a kid to be part of that. Thank you, Sean. It is just, Shauna, it's just my hair. And I keep talking about cutting it off, but I am too lazy for that. I'm too lazy to do the upkeep. And I'm living in a place without a lot of hairdressers. And I can't afford to fly back to the States to have it done every 6 to 8 weeks. It's just not part of what I can do. And so, what all this means for the future, heaven only knows. I am getting closer and closer to publication. My original book contract was linked through Patheos and is gone now. That's gone away. So I'll be self-publishing. There's no shame in that. And I think that a lot of people, there are a lot of really great writers I've discovered that self-publish. 3 more days until I can change my name back to Autistic Shill. Ha, yes. You have to wait 14 days after 2 name changes. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. YouTube has all these new policies that are in place. So this feels like an opportune moment to talk about places like Patheos, like YouTube, that change their rules for the worse. One of the things that Patheos did that I could not get down with, that I'm not down with at all, is when BeliefNet bought us, we were told nothing changes, everything stays the same. Okay. The parish admin and Episcopal Church, I'm sure you've seen your share of all kinds of stuff. But where was I? I swear. You have to excuse me. I'm on a ton of asthma meds. I had a reaction last night to someone's little dog they brought into a bar room. Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 13. I've got to write that down. Devils do. Okay. So, Patheos sold to BeliefNet. They said nothing will change. It was right not long before the election cycle, maybe 6 months before. And the day that Donald Trump was sworn in, they came down with all new contracts. You couldn't curse in any way, shape, or form unless it was a title or a thing we were quoting. There were so many people you couldn't talk about, such as the NRA. You couldn't talk negatively about them. You could only praise them. So many rules and regulations. And a lot of people left then. I almost left then, but I ended up sticking it out a few more years after that and playing by those rules. And it was, hey, Grace Peter, Happy New Year to you too. So a lot of us just held our nose and we kept on going. Because it was, every time we got new owners, we get new contracts. Most of the time, the contracts did not change from one to the other. Java Man, I remember that. Let me tell you why I remember that. I was actually in Costa Rica the day he was inaugurated on one of my many Costa Rican vacations. And that time was the trip we were actually looking at communities and saying, okay, what you got, Costa Rica? Where do we want to be? I know everybody stayed home. Everybody stayed home. I may. I have things I have to do. I'm putting up my Christmas tree. I've got to do a neb treatment in a few minutes, and I have clothes to hang. Unfortunately, life goes on here for me. Last night, I got into a fight in a bar. Can you believe that? A guy came walking up to me with a little fuzzy, hairy dog, and I started wheezing. And I'm searching through my bag, handshaking because I'm breathing so occluded, and looking for my N95 mask so I could put it on and get the hell away from him. I started arguing with him and saying, "Get your dog away from me, get your dog away from me, get your dog away from me." And I love dogs, but there are certain kinds of dogs that their hair sends me into immediate asthma attack. His was one of those. He kept saying, "Oh, no, 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 I'm not getting away from you because my dog is hyperallergenic. I have mast cell, get away from me." So we kept going back and forth until finally I got up and without a word just left the table. My poor husband didn't know what had happened. I think he was in the bathroom or something. He just knew I disappeared. That was all he knew. So last night after I disappeared, I went to the car and tried to use my portable nebulizer, which it turned out only had one vial of neb solution, and discovered from my emergency stash of things in my car that somebody had lifted my bottle of Zyflo. They lifted my box of Benadryl brand Benadryl, and they had lifted, I think, a couple of vials of the neb solution. And here's the worst thing. They lifted the bottle I had 2 Ativan in. 2. Why do I carry Ativan? Because when you have the kind of asthma I have, you have a panic attack when you get it shut down, particularly if you have to use the EpiPen. Well, I didn't use my EpiPen last night, but sure as hell, I had a panic attack just using the medicines. Yeah, it is awful, and it's my life story. I have mast cell, and I didn't contract mast cell. I was diagnosed after leaving my old church. One of the things that I've talked about a lot in No Longer Quivering, and I'm going to continue to talk about, is the fact that so many of us women that live that lifestyle, that are constantly birthing them babies and trying to be the best wives and mothers we can, who are really trying our darndest, getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going to bed at 11 doesn't work. You will have a breakdown eventually. And the fact that I was in a church with links to Bethel Reading that said, do not use medication, avoid your medication, avoid giving any appearance of illness, avoid giving the devil any glory. So you weren't allowed to say, "I'm wheezing." You weren't allowed to say that. What you were saying was saying, Jesus took my asthma on the cross. He suffered my asthma on the cross so I didn't have to. Devil, you have no right to put this asthma on me. I am going to walk in faith and know that I am healed by the blood of Jesus. And then you walked on without doing anything about your illness. Rita, they stole some of my asthma meds. They didn't steal all of them. They left one of the vials, which was good. They left the EpiPens. I'm sure they had no idea what they are because they're rare and hard to get here. You have to go to San Jose. There's only one pharmacy that carries them. You think they're expensive in the States? Nothing compared to what they are here. So I buy mine when I go to the States. The Zyflo I get from the States because they don't have it here. And the Ativan I get locally, but because of all of the thinking around opioids and benzos and those things here, there, and everywhere else, you really have to save those things for the worst. Yeah, because you know that anything bad that happens to you was caused by your lack of faith, or you're doing it wrong. We had a different one too at our church. We said it was caused by generational curses. So I never really believed that about illnesses, and received quite a lot of crap from people when I had my hysterectomy, even though at that point I was just so completely done with everything with them. I couldn't, nah, I could no longer suffer the movie Carrie level bleeding episodes every month, and I had a bleeding disorder. So I did that to my asthma. I did that to my own self. So when I left, I got immediately sicker immediately. I was no longer denying that I was having symptoms, and I discovered I had mast cell that was driving the asthma, it was driving everything else. It had been driving the asthma since I was a small child, apparently. I was born with it. Maybe she was born with it. Yeah, I was. And there were people generations back that had real bad asthma and various things wrong with them, and nobody could figure out what it was. Well, that's what it was. I'm convinced they all had mast cell, and it's inherited. And the church, like I said, you weren't allowed to. At one point, they pressured me to give up my CPAP machine, and I did. I gave it up. I prayed only, and I ended up back on the CPAP machine, except I ended up on a much higher pressure. So that's one of the things they'll do is they'll run you ragged, and then they'll make you deny your own ailments. And I was not able to do that very long, to my everlasting shame. And I got shamed pretty hard because my daughter, I would not do that. I made sure she got proper medical care. It's one thing to deny yourself. It's a whole different ballgame when you start denying medical care to your children. Fortunately, I never went there with it, but I definitely did deny my own, and I'm sicker as a result. I'm convinced of it. So many women coming out of quiverful and like religions carry chronic ailments out. They just do. It seems to be a feature, not a bug. So many, and so many end up on disability. And the sad thing is so many were housewives, they don't even qualify for disability. They've never paid into the Social Security system. They can't collect Social Security, disability. And my husband and I are a rarity. We got out of our old Quiverful church together as a couple. And we're still together. That is rare. Most of the time, when you get out of these groups, these high demand religious groups, one partner leaves and the other one stays completely stuck in the high demand religious organization. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. And getting out, like I said, it took massive amounts of therapy for everyone. It just is what it is. If it's my prayer for anyone in 2023, it is that you continue on your healing journey from leaving these things. It is definitely a journey, and sometimes it's 3 steps forward and a step back. It's hard, it's strong, you have to be courageous and strong to overcome it. Okay, you guys, I've rambled enough. I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope you're having a really good first of your year. I am praying that the first of my year last night was not a coming a coming features preview of what I'm to get the rest of the year, because if it is, it sucks. Okay, I love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Maybe I'll see if I can listen to Aaron while I'm taking my neb treatment.